Well, it looks like Enchantress 5-0'd, so we're going to play some Enchantress. Main deck, rest in peace gaming! Hello folks, Phil Gallagher, aka ThrabenU here for another Legacy video, and today Armchair General has donated to see some hot Enchantress action. So, let's take a look at the deck list. If you have seen Enchantress before, the core of this should be pretty familiar to you, although there's a little bit of hot tech. Generally speaking, you want to get an Enchantress effect into play, something that draws you a card whenever you cast an enchantment spell. And some of these are attached to enchantments themselves, some of them are creatures, some of them can be searched up via a green sun. And ultimately, we will be looking to win the game either by turning our enchantments into creatures and just Hulk smashing our opponent to death, or by activating a Helm of Obedience while we have a Rest in Peace in play, sort of like the Painter Grindstone combo. It just goes and mills your opponent out. So what is unique about this deck list? Probably Vexing Bauble is what stands out the most here. This is just some anti-blue tech to make it so that maybe your one critical Enchantress card that you just need to have a functional game of Magic actually resolves. And why might Enchantress come back right now? Orcish Bowmaster took over Legacy for a little while, to the point that some people were calling for bans. And Bowmasters has gone down a lot in play. It turns out Psychic Frog is just like a better thing to do in your 2-drop slot when you are blue. And while there is still some Bowmaster in the format, it's not quite at that 40% threshold that it was for a decent amount of the past few months. We're maybe at roughly 25% Bowmaster right now, but it's not played as in as high of quantities as it was previously. Even if a quarter of the decks have Bowmasters, they might not be in the deck in game one at all. So we're going to be this ramp deck that can sometimes just play a prison role. Solitary Confinement is a soft win condition. It gives you Shroud and prevents all damage that would be dealt to you. And if you have Sterling Grove to give your other enchantments Shroud, it can actually be very hard to get rid of a Solitary Confinement. I say that this is a soft lock because there are plenty of Brazen Borrower, Abrupt Decay, Assassin's Trophy type cards running around the format, Otawara and Boseiju as well, that can kind of break out of this. For a long time, enchantments were close to untouchable in game ones, and that's just really not true anymore. As far as the sideboard goes, Surge of Salvation might not be one that you know. You and permanents you control gain hexproof until end of turn, prevent all damage at black or red sources that would be dealt to creatures you control this turn. That part not so much relevant, but this can be a way to just like, oops, save yourself from a combo finish. And if you're worried about drawing our entire deck, a thing that technically exists that you can do is cast a Green Sun to put a card back into your deck so you don't deck yourselves. Or alternatively, you'll frequently see Enchantress lists play one Emrakul that they can at some point discard to hand size to shuffle a bunch of cards back into their deck. So yeah, let's go ahead and hop into matches here. I don't ask for it very often, but likes and comments are really important right now. I am on my 30th. I think at the end of this league, I will have played 30 matches this weekend, kind of recovering from having power out for a week and losing a week's worth of wages. So likes, comments, subscriptions, that sort of stuff matters a lot right now. And should you need some cards, especially with MagicCon Vegas coming up, TOAMagic.com is an awesome place to shop in person or online. If you order online, promo code ThrabenU will save you 5% on your order. You can even pick up your cards on site and save the hassle of trying to hunt down whatever cool card you need for your various events or casual games. All right, let's battle. Okay, this is not a Dryad Arbor deck, so I only have 1 mana here, meaning that this hand is not actually functional, unfortunately. Yikes. This is another 1-lander with no mana ramp. I'm gonna go to 5. Okay, yeah, no, this is totally fine. So we go land, Enchantress effect. a Utopia Sprawl, and then I get to keep one other card on top of that. This is perfectly fine and good. Assuming all my things work, I probably keep Enchantress's Presence. That will allow me to snowball the hardest moving forward. And so that I can play around something like a Daze on turn 2, I am going to go ahead and Utopia Sprawl this turn, rather than trying to save it for a card in the future. Alright, so we should expect an Urza's Tower to come down next turn. Do I have a Surveil land in this mana base? I do not. That's not surprising. The ETB tapped downside is pretty high. I am going to cast Argothian Enchantress here. It is less mana efficient than playing Enchantress's Presence, but Enchantress's Presence will draw me a card next turn. Alright, what awful 4-mana thing are you going to do to me? Yeah, that is indeed an awful 4-mana thing. I think I have some generic exile-y things that can help with that, though. And I will just thin a land out of the deck here. Okay, let's thin another land out of the deck. I'm going to stay on basics. So here's my first card draw. I would love to hit a 1-mana enchantment to just follow it up and draw 2 more cards this turn, but we're not living in that timeline. My opponent loses a little for their ring, and hopefully doesn't do something broken. If my opponent has something like All Is Dust in their deck, that kind of just defeats my entire deck, just in one spell. So, you know, that's just kind of something to keep in the back of my mind. Oh, that's a power plant too. My opponent is playing more than just tower. Usually it's only tower, or the synergies with Planar Nexus, which is all of the various Urza lands at the same time. Alright, this sort of thing is why I did not fetch the Savannah. That's so much mana. Okay, sure. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I maximize my card draws by playing Argothian Enchantress here, but I think I would like the capability of casting other cards here. Let's thin a land out of the deck. On Thin Ice is creatures. Oh, do I not have a generic thing that just answers a 1 ring? Noted. Okay. I think my game plan is combo. Let's go 1, 2. I think I just want to use my white here. Leave green, green floating. Rest in peace. That's cool. Then we'll Destiny Spinner. Okay. That was a decent number of card draws. I have left Rest in Peace in hand. Hopefully next turn I could just like draw something like a Serra Sanctum. Ooh. Sure. That's fine. I wasn't actually planning on winning the game that way. And I'll take 3 in combat. That's perfectly fine. Ah, opponent discarding. That might mean a Kozilek's command is a thing that can happen here. Wild Growth is effectively free, while giving me a draw 3. We would like to find a Helm and a Serra's Sanctum. Solitary Confinement is cool. Let's use my white mana here. I can get more white mana very easily to cast a Rest in Peace. This is 3 looks at Helm. Oseiju. Nuke the graveyards. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So Serra Sanctum alone is already Helm plus activate. I'm going to cast a Sythis here. 5, 6, 7. This still leaves me... I could actually just cast On Thin Ice here. And use less mana. Vexing Bauble, Sterling Grove. Exile the Devourer of Destiny. I have 7 mana, so I can play 1 2-mana enchantment, which is probably Sterling Grove, and still have the ability to Helm kill this turn. If I don't Helm kill, I will play Solitary Confinement. Damn. I did not get more cheap green stuff either. Do I have a second Sterling Grove? No. Yes. Second Sterling Grove is actually very good. So let's do second Sterling Grove. Where are my fucking Helms, man? Play Solitary Confinement to round out the turn. Okay, there's a Helm. So this should, in theory, win next turn. All my enchantments have Shroud. And I have a shit ton of permanents, so I don't know that I'm in danger for something like an Emrakul happening. Make your spawns. Yeah. So, I need to keep Rest in Peace and Helm in hand, just in case something like an All is Dust wipes out every single one of my permanents. So fetch land goes, Green Sun goes, Enchantress effect goes, random land goes, Sythis goes, another Sythis goes, Vexing Bauble goes, Forest goes. Okay, cool. So I imagine that we're probably okay here, but very, very bad things can happen. There's a kicked Sowing Mycospawn that can get rid of my Sarah Sanctum, which is why I held one. There's a Karn or Mycosynth Lattice. So I now don't get to cast spells because all my lands are off. So I could sit here and, survive for 7 or 8 turns and waste some clock, but this doesn't actually get me to a winning position, unfortunately. I'm not going to make my opponent think through it. I'll just concede here. That's fine. So, you don't really need Vexing Bauble. That's anti-blue tech. I can do something like Disruptor Flute or Stony Silence for the One Ring. I think I like Disruptor Flutes better. Those can also just name Karns if I'm afraid of that happening. What does Ossification do? That is a way to get rid of Karn. It's also just creature removal. That seems fine. I'm going to go down 1 Solitary Confinement. Go down 1 Green Sun. All that good. Not mess around with the Stony Silences. I don't have an Enchantress effect, and I kind of need one of those to be functional. I'll mulligan this. Hey, there's an Enchantress effect. This is fine. I'll put the Solitary Confinement back into deck. We can get that later. Stony Silence is kind of a sketch sideboard card if I am planning on usually winning the game with Helm. Would that even be in the deck? Like, do I have enough generic things in the sideboard to board in if I want to board out 7-ish effects? Not really. So this turn will just be Argothian Enchantress and pass, and then we'll figure it out from there. Next turn I go like green, white, leave green, floating for Sterling Grove, Sarah Sanctum, then Rest in Peace. Conceptually, Enchantress is supposed to be the deck that goes bigger than the other deck, and that's just not happening here. Oh, that was a Spirit Guide. Sure. My opponent have Ghost Quarters? If they have Ghost Quarters, they could knock Wild Growth off. Nope, just immediately getting Urza's Tower. So that is online. In case my plans change, I'm not going to fetch to thin here. 2 mana Argothian Enchantress, 2 mana Rest in Peace, draw 2. Or 2 mana Sterling Grove, draw 2. Yeah, let's 2 mana Sterling Grove, draw 2. Get another basic forest. And Sarah Sanctum, Sterling Grove. Oh? I have literal no idea what this is. Unless it's just a K command for X equals 1. Yeah, okay. I can maybe sequence this turn differently and get a basic plains. If this land is around, I want more green mana, but things can happen to the Sarah Sanctum, like kicked Sowing Mycospawn. Oh shit. This is just fuck my deck, right? Yeah. Nope. I am just going to concede to that card. I am just not going to beat that realistically. Yeah, like this just undoes any progress that I do immediately. Nope. Rough. Today's video is sponsored by Moxfield.com, which is, in my opinion, the best Magic the Gathering website for hosting your deck lists online. One of my favorite features is that you can create your own custom tags for when you're deck building. So let's say you're building a commander deck and you want to know, hey, how many copy effects do I have? You can just create a tag and sort everything, and there's fun little hotkeys so that you can do this more quickly. So really, please consider checking them out if you are looking to tinker with deck lists online. Okay, I have kept my opening hand here. We don't have the turn 1 mana acceleration that I might want, but we do have 2 different Enchantress effects, which is great if the first one gets countered. My best top deck is probably a 1 mana accelerant, but we don't get that. I am worried that we are just going to play against Show and Tell here and die. Not Show and Tell? Okay. That's probably fine. We have a bunch of non-traditional mana costs in this deck. Like, there's a lot of 2s and 3s and 4s. So we might lose some 1-drops along the way to this counterbalance. But if this card does not get Force of Willed, the Shroud here means that this is very difficult to actually remove. And we don't care if counterbalance triggers counter our cards, because we will still cantrip from them. Ooh. Alright. The trample here means that I can't even just block and stop the Monarch, unfortunately. Grab a basic out of the deck. Hit the plains. Do I want to put this into play now? I'd rather put this into play next turn and draw off both Sythis and Argothian Enchantress. Scalding Tarn on top. Sure. Oh, I guess I just get to do both. Or no, I don't get to do both if that resolves. Sure. This also has a point of power that this can do a love tap. So my turn's looking okay. Mystic Sanctuary. Okay, opponent knows what they're about. Understood. I'll take my 2. Supreme Verdict that kills both of these would be pretty annoying. Yeah. Oops, all Destiny Spinners. Oh, I'm a fucking idiot. 4th Airlingus was just put on top. Oh no, they drew it off Monarch! Yes, I'm not an idiot. Alright. Cool. So now, this is uncounterable. And it takes another sweeper or 2 removal spells to get both of these off. Okay, okay. What if I became the pretty princess, though? Swords on 1. Prismatic Ending on the other. And then pass, just drawing cards along the way. I'm gonna put it into play. Doesn't feel great. I have a couple of things that I can play. Monastery Mentor in the year of Arcaranos 2024. Predict in the year of Arcaranos 2024 as well. My opponent gets their draw too because they knew Mentor was on top. Solitary Confinement plus Monarch is a thing, I guess. Oh shit, it is just another Mentor. That is unfortunate for me. Opponent's going to draw a card. I'm going to just thin a forest out of the deck. Go to 15. And I can, in theory, answer this Monastery Mentor. In practice, is that actually going to happen? Probably not. So, yeah. Opponent brainstorms in response. So kind of the disaster case here is my opponent Swords to Plowshares, Destiny Spinner, leaves a 1-drop on top, and then counters on Thin Ice, which is currently uncounterable. I'm going to give up. I think this one is over at this point, and I'm going to value my time. I'm going to swap On Thin Ice for Ossification. I like On Thin Ice's efficiency, but if my opponent is playing a bunch of boomer cards like Predict and Monastery Mentor, like Jace the Mind Sculptor probably fits in with the sort of gameplay they are probably trying to do. My opponent has Terminus. That's not great for me. I like Carpet of Flowers here quite a bit. Solitary Confinement is weird because I don't want it unless it is the most important thing that is happening. So like Solitary Confinement versus 4th Airlingus or a giant Monastery Mentor board is good, but I otherwise don't want to draw that card. It's expensive and it requires things to be going well in order for it to be good. I'm going to keep 1 in the deck so that I can have access to it. And I'm going to try trimming one of these still. I'm going to try to keep this. I think I have to play Utopia Sprawl on 1 for this to be reasonable. And I think this is going on green. So I want to play Vexing Bauble prior to Enchantress's presence. So I think that means Vexing Bauble immediately this turn and play Sterling Grove as setup. And then we are going to have Shroudy uncounterable enchantments, which leaves me in a decent position. And hopefully not this turn, but the following turn I actually get my card draw stuff going. There's the fetch to clear Brainstorm. Ooh, no Prismatic Ending to like take out my Vexing Bauble or anything, so my Enchantress's presence is in theory resolving. Ooh. Or I just Green Sun. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, I can just green sun here. and then I draw a card off the Enchantress's Presence next turn. That's fine unless Terminus is randomly on top of my opponent's library from the brains. No, there was a fetch afterwards. All right, Shroudy Friend. If my opponent is randomly playing a couple of Wastelands in their deck, that would be no bueno for me. I think I would be more likely to see like Blood Moon or Back to Basics out of this deck than actual Wastelands. Yeah, okay, that honestly fair. Deck's perfect, no changes. Hand looks good here. We'll see what my opponent does. Oh yeah, no, we have all the boomer tech in this deck here. We haven't seen Triumph of St. Catherine yet. That is also a sort of thing that would be good. I think I want 3 mana on turn 2, so I think I'm going to go ahead and Wild Growth this forest. And then I can go Vexing Bauble into Argothian Enchantress just like last game. Basic land. Counterbalance. Sure. Pull a basic out of the deck. Through the plains. This could get randomly countered. It gets randomly countered by Ponder, but that means that this does not get countered by the Ponder. Hopefully it does not get hit by Force of Will. All right, fantastic. So on a slightly longer scale, I am looking to find a Destiny Spinner and have Sterling Grove give it Shroud. That's the game plan. 3rd land drop. That's fine. So then the next question is, if my opponent can name 1 or 2, or can put 1 or 2 on top of their deck, which one do they actually do? All right, they're just going to attack my mana a little bit. That's reasonable. That's going to keep me from double spelling most of the time. Let's try to set up this turn. Could have played a land. I don't expect my opponent to be playing Daze, but it was a mistake not to do that. And we're fine thinning a land from the deck. All right, assuming we don't eat a Terminus or Supreme Verdict, I am in incredibly good shape. All right, is that Ponder going to top? It is. Yeah. All right. So 1 drop on top, which means I can resolve Sythis and Sterling Grove this turn, in theory. Not if I click on that fucking land. Oh, that was a bad mistake. It was a really, really, really bad mistake. So now Sythis does not have Shroud. Oh, that probably punted this whole game. Never mind. I'm a genius. I saved Sterling Grove for later. Now my opponent casts that Ponder. They don't have a ton of resources, but Counterbalance, ooh, potentially does some work. So I am going to cast Rest in Peace here. This is mostly to check to see if a 2-drop will resolve. All right, Swords to Plowshares. So I nuke all graveyards. I am going to cast Sterling Grove. This is just a tutor, in all likelihood. This is just going to tutor for Enchantress's Presence, I think. I think this is just going to tutor for Enchantress's Presence. It's really tempting to just leave it in play and try to take natural draws here. But I know my opponent just drew Swords to Plowshares. There's not that many 3-drops that they can randomly hit. And so this is a great strategic move. Lol. What a tilt. So this is why I boarded out 1 Solitary Confinement. It is just a very bad card when it is all by itself. We're going to do this. Force of Negation doesn't counter this. Alright, 2-drop. 4th Aerlingas. So my opponent does not technically have mana for that right now. That's the good news. Okay, yeah, don't have red mana yet. If I play this, it immediately just eats Force of Negation. I'm going to hold this, because sometimes I can play an Enchantress and then cast this afterwards and draw a card off of it, even if I get countered. Sure. Oh, it has Wear Tear in their deck, and they were willing to get rid of it. Slightly surprising to me. I don't know what sort of prismatic ending nonsense they have over there. At some point, my opponent is going to hit red mana, and I basically instantly die. All right, let's go 1, 2, 3. Cast this, try to get the Force of Negation out of my opponent's hand. Sure. So that was the Force of Negation. We technically got it out of our opponent's hand. Does that mean I can actually resolve this card while Force of Negation is on top of library? It does. Okay, so my stuff's Shroudy. So we can maybe hope for Shroudy Destiny Spinner. Fuck. Alright, well, we're dead. Yeah, that is a literal 2-turn clock, assuming my opponent taps out, which seems safe if they have Force of Negation to back it up. So that's X equals 5. 10 damage, followed by 10 damage. And I can't resolve solitary confinement. Yeah, no. GG's. Our boomer deck got beaten by their boomer deck. Alright, so we have turn 1 acceleration into turn 2 Enchantress's Presence, or we can slow down a little bit if we need to put the Vexing Bauble into play. We would prefer not to, but if our opponent opens up on a blue land of some kind, I probably have to. Yeah. So we're gonna time walk ourselves here, so our Enchantress's Presence does not get countered. Supreme Verdict. Sure. We're gonna hold Utopia Sprawl to play after Enchantress's Presence. Sure. Supreme Verdict probably means no days. And Supreme Verdict probably means Swords to Plowshares and other spot removal. I don't know that Destiny Spinner actually will make it around the table. So I'm going to try to just stick Enchantress's Presence here. That is another blue basic Spell Pierce. Sure. Third land drop. Tamiyo's fine. So we're going to work on putting up some defenses and then hopefully draw a new Enchantress effect. I think I'm going to give my opponent a card draw with Tamiyo to work on setting up my resources. I would love to find an Enchantress and then play on Thin Ice and remove Tamiyo. The downside of trying to on Thin Ice Tamiyo this turn is if my opponent has another Brainstorm, Tamiyo just flips immediately. And then I don't actually accomplish anything with my removal spell. Alright, so let's attempt on Thin Ice. Attempt to kill Tamiyo. Succeed at killing Tamiyo. Is my mana bottlenecked enough that I would like to play Utopia Sprawl? I think so. Probably just more green. The opponent draws their clue. I think that clue should have been cracked in response to On Thin Ice to see if they draw Brainstorm. But I don't know if they were holding open something else relevant. This one I'll hold. Now, notably, Vexing Bauble says whenever a player casts a spell, if no mana was spent to cast it, counter that spell. So, wow, Lorien revealed land cycling rather than draw 3? Opponent almost certainly has Force of Will then. Anyway, I don't know if I finished that thought. My opponent can hardcast Force of Wills and Force of Negations. Sure. Ugh. So let's attempt to on Thin Ice another Tamiyo. We're going to put these Tamiyos under the same land. That way, if something happens to this one land, both Tamiyos come back and one gets legend ruled immediately. Sure. Interesting that it was Prismatic Ending on that and not Vexing Bauble. Not saying it's wrong, it's just interesting. You have to tap both of these. Cast this spell. I assume that this gets countered? It might not. Yeah, actually, this might not. This is not as important as an Enchantress effect. I'm not interested in using this as a tutor. I'm not under any real degree of pressure immediately. I think Sterling Grove protecting most of my permanents is nice. My opponent can choose to flip the Tamiyo next turn by cracking 2 clues on their own turn. I'm unsure if they are actually interested in that, as just like this clue machine when they're holding up Force of Will mana on my turn is actively good. This is fine to just cast green, green, green easily. Probably be Savannah then. This means that Mystic Sanctuary doesn't bring back Lorien revealed later in this game. Okay, cool. And pass. And pass. Sure. So the Tamiyo minus on the backside is now not super relevant to Fairy. I can bounce my Vexing Bauble out of play if my opponent wants. Nope. Well, this is not how we want this game to be going. If I draw something like a Destiny Spinner, it maybe becomes reasonable. Fuck. I think this is the point where I'm just going to concede. My opponent has a card advantage engine, ways to bounce Vexing Bauble out of play, so counterspells that are free are on. I can't draw any additional cards. I don't know, I guess I can still just like somehow resolve Helm combo. Maybe I won't. Yeah, so this game now needs to be played in a way where Helm combo is the plan. It's just, are you gonna fucking Vendilion click me? Is that about to happen? Oh. Yeah, okay. Let's call it good there. So, Ossification answers Planeswalkers. That's fine. Disruptor Flute kind of answers things over there. It can answer Planeswalkers as well. But it doesn't actually take a Narset or a Teferi off the board. I don't know that I actually want those. I think I'm just going to take out the solitary confinements and then find room for Carpet of Flowers. Maybe over a Green Sun and like 1 Wild Growth since I'm bringing in 2 carpets. I need 2 mana. I need 2 lands to be functional. No. Yes. I'm going to put the Helm back. That is a card that I am very much not ready for at the moment. We'll go green for Utopia Sprawl since we have Serra Sanctum already. And opponent's got a Ponder. Notably here in terms of sideboarding, the On Thin Ice is normally something that I would board out versus these decks, but Tamiyo is a lot of card advantage. I can try to set up Destiny Spinner this turn, Enchantress's Presence uncounterably next turn. Then I don't have fuel for it afterwards, but I think I am going to play this game a little slowly. I would rather this eat the Force of Will if my opponent has one. Now, sometimes this is not going to pay off well, and my opponent is just going to Sword Splashers this, Force of Will this, and I don't accomplish what I was actually hoping to accomplish. Alright, there's an ending. I'm going to just fetch a basic out of my deck here. Would love to draw a 1-mana enchantment here. Negative. Do some more deck thinning. And let's do the Force of Will check. Fuck. We have not caught a break here. So, what am I looking for if I'm the opponent? Narset's a big one. Force of Will's a big one. Third land drop's really important if they don't have it yet. They do. And we're chilling. I think I'm just gonna pass. Hedging against Terminus randomly being a top card right now, right after that Brainstorm. There's a fetch. Be a Surveil land. Junking Spell Pierce. Yeah, that is getting worse at this stage of the game. More selection. And land drop. I'm just gonna lazy fetch here. Grab a forest. Sure. Yeah? Alright. Do I want to naked play out Rest in Peace? I think I do. Mystic Sanctuary is a thing that is very reasonably in my opponent's deck. This means that I don't have something to draw a card with next turn, though. Never mind. Alright, let's top deck a, God damn it. I guess the last card maybe isn't a blue card. Alright. Force of Will's so good here. Oh. Fuck. Alright. So assuming that my opponent has a blue card, the 4th Aerlingas plus Monarch stuff eats me alive very quickly. Yikes. Force of Will is just going to counter this. Why am I thinking about this? Yeah. What? What? Target a forest. Combat, attackers, kill Narset. Now card draw is online for the future. Am I just going to die? Like, is my opponent just going to play another 4th Aerlingas and I'm just dead? Sure. Sterling Grove doesn't do anything. We'll play Sterling Grove. Maybe my opponent decides that that's counterworthy for some reason. I don't know. Maybe not Force of Willing. The Destiny Spinner is correct because the only way you die from this position is to Helm, which they presumably have covered. Yep. That was absolutely brutal. We cannot beat these blue-white control decks, I don't think. Which is weird, because the Enchantress decks used to be very good against these style of decks. But now they just have much faster clocks than they used to, and better tools to remove enchantments. Alright, I'm going to be keeping this one. The Vexing Baubles feel really awkward because they're conceptually good, but knocking yourself off curve of like Utopia Sprawl into Enchantress's Presence or something like that is actually pretty rough. Sure. I think I'm playing Utopia Sprawl on 1 over Vexing Bauble on 1. Or I'll play Wild Growth now, I guess. Fantastic. And then I can play Vexing Bauble on 2 around Daze, followed by Rest in Peace to shut off graveyards in case my opponent is some Reanimator Psychic Frog nonsense. I also want to get Rest in Peace in play in case my opponent is something like a show and tell combo deck, I'll have a backdoor out at just drawing a Helm and activating it so that they die before I do. Sure. Blue-black confirmed. Oh man, that rest in peace is gonna be chef's kiss levels of good here. Let's get our basic planes. Float green, Vexing Bauble, nice, and rip, which is going to resolve. Nice, Nethergoyf. So upon seeing Nethergoyf, we should be thinking that our opponent is Tempo rather than Reanimator. And we'll see kind of what their game plan is. Just sticking a Psychic Frog is perfectly reasonable here as the thing to do. Ooh, that probably takes my Enchantress's Presence. I think it's easily my best card. Yeah, they agree. Given that I'm a little bottlenecked on mana here, I think I am okay doing this, putting this on white, and then protecting my rest in peace. Given that my opponent has no clock in play currently, I don't think I need to immediately crack Sterling Grove for an Enchantress's Presence, but it probably wouldn't really be bad to do so. Swamp goes to exile. I'm going to set the upkeep stop in case I want to. Just another note about Vexing Bauble here. If my opponent passes the turn with 2 mana available, they could hard cast 8 days still. Psychic Frog. I'll just on thin ice that with my turn. Ew. We're not going to play that yet, though. Wasteland is a card that exists. We'll take out the frog and pass. New frog. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I think this is an okay spot to sack Sterling Grove for Enchantress's Presence, and then just play Solitary Confinement to fog for a turn while drawing a card. Yeah, Enchantress's Presence. Draw that for turn. So let's leave 1 green floating here. Then cast Solitary Confinement, still leaving green floating. Beautiful. Cast a Destiny Spinner. Yeah, that's fantastic. So my enchantments are targetable by something like Brazen Borrower now. If my opponent has that in Game 1 scenarios, it would not surprise me. More worried about Bowmaster or something. Okay, opponent just gives it up. That's reasonable. Carpet of Flowers seems good. Ossification as additional creature-based removal seems good, even though it's more expensive than on Thin Ice. I'm going to take out the Sterling Groves and then take out a Green Sun for being mana inefficient. I think it's very close between cutting a Green Sun and cutting a Sythis here. Sythis is just vulnerable to Fatal Push, and Green Sun for X equals 2 can get an Enchantress, which is Shroudy, but mana efficiency is something that matters. I'm not always going to have Vexing Bauble to just say no to all counter spells like I did this game. This hand's great. It does not have the white removal that I would like to see. It does not have Rest in Peace, which I would like to see, but it has mana into Enchantress effect. I can potentially make things uncounterable as well. Yeah, that's fine. Nethergoyfs can get big in this matchup where I realistically can put enchantments into graveyard, or an enchantment can get countered, and then the Nethergoyf just grows. Opponent can spin their wheels a little bit, probably doing something like Ponder and Fetch. I'll probably get attacked for 2. I could get attacked for 3 if my opponent does something like an inefficient Brainstorm to just push damage. Sure. Surveilland could also dump a new type in. Not this time. Vexing Bauble would be a really good draw here. On Thin Ice is a card that I am looking for. I don't have the mana for it yet. If I play Destiny Spinner and Destiny Spinner dies, that grows Nethergoyf. No. Sorry. Nethergoyf is just their graveyard. I think I'm going to go Argothian Enchantress around days here. This probably gets a Force of Will, which I'm fine with, because I just have 2 more Enchantress effects in hand. Frog? Emperor of Bones. Sure. You may take out my Enchantress. I am okay if you make a hasty copy of that card. Fantastic. Okay, not removing creatures this turn. I think so. Let's do a basic. I don't think I need to draw a card. I think I like this into Sythis, and I maybe take a little bit of damage this turn. Then I am probably stable or close to it. Part of this depends on how much stuff my opponent has in hand. I'm going to take that. My opponent could put 2+1/+1 counters on this if they want, but then they're not holding up mana for other things, which I'm good with. Petty Theft, sure. Do I have the mana to Enchantress's Presence? I think so. This draws me into mana some portion of the time. So yeah, draw, Vexing Baubles, whatever. Not sure which one of these I actually get rid of here. This one can technically hit me for 4 immediately. I think I get rid of the Nethergoyf though. No attack. I can also consider Destiny Spinner block with Emperor of Bones and force my opponent to use the mana. I don't think I am doing that. I think I would like to resolve Enchantress's Presence and or Vexing Bauble first. Okay. So, white mana is a little bit of a bottleneck here. Sythis is really good if I draw another enchantment here that I can cast or another land. Yes. So then fetch, forest, 1, 2, and 3. This will get me that life back immediately. Let's always yield to that. Okay, cool. There's some removal. All pass turn. Sure. So my spells will be counterable if I block with Destiny Spinner. Sythis gains me life. Life's a big deal. My opponent only has 2 cards. I could play Vexing Bauble. Don't really hate this block. Force my opponent to use the mana. Keep this in play. And play a new Destiny Spinner while gaining some life. Yeah, that's fine. You have your hasty 0/1 Shrouded Creature. You can get another Goyf. I am hoping to do something like Rest in Peace in this turn cycle. 2 cards remain. And sack that. Utopia Sprawl. That is essentially a free card. That also gives me another white. Let's do that immediately. Triggers. I guess this was counterable. I could have considered doing other things first. But it doesn't really make sense to counter something that looks like this. So, Wild Growth. Gonna gain more life. Rest in Peace is fantastic. That alone keeps me alive. Not played a land yet. I actually probably want to tap this. The Destiny Spinner should be fine. Yeah, the Destiny Spinner should be fine. Green. Alright, this is a Force of Will moment if my opponent has it. A Daze. That's fine. Play with my floating white. Now my stuff is uncounterable. So, 2 mana. Rest in Peace. I would love to draw Sarah's Sanctum here. I just win if I do. Okay, cool. So now I have to make my land drop. We'll do Forest. I'll Utopia Sprawl. Get some more white here. Fantastic. So I've made land drops. Did this attack? Nah, that point of damage doesn't matter. I'm going to combo kill my opponent. So get rid of a land, get rid of a land. Get rid of 1 Vexing Bauble. Okay, yeah, no, that's fair. All right. Took 4 rounds, but we did put a win on the board with this deck. We kind of snatched it from the jaws of defeat, though. Like, it was very close. Okay, final round here. I have a decent mix of lands and spells, but I have no Enchantress effect, and I don't really want to, like, try to use this to tutor for 1. That's an incredibly inefficient use of my resources. I would rather mulligan. I'm gonna risk this one. I'm gonna keep this. I think getting rid of Sterling Grove. So I can hit land or any 1 mana accelerant here to be able to cast Argothian Enchantress. And Rest in Peace in the current metagame is a pretty reasonable card since there's so many blue-black X decks running around that take collateral damage from it. Yeah. That's not what I'm looking for. Don't Psychic Frog me. That's not Psychic Frog, so this is probably an indicator that my opponent is a combo deck. I guess it could be Grixis Control. I think it's more likely that my opponent is something in like the Storm-ish ballpark. Yeah, all signs pointing to combo here. Okay. That works. So yeah, 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 and pass. I am pretty sure that my opponent is combo, but there's still some chance that they could be Grixis control. I conceptually want to put Sythis into play and start gaining some life. Individual points of life could be the difference between life and death. My opponent only has 5 cards in hand, but has a decently stocked graveyard at this point. Threshold almost on for Cabal Ritual. Ooh, I have 3 mana this turn. I'll go ahead and do a Vexing Bauble first, which shuts off artifact mana, and also some stuff from stuff like Besiege the Mirror. And I guess since I have no enchantments in hand, I will do this one, despite the fact that Sythis is the one that I really want to get going. Ooh, there goes Sythis. That's fine. Vexing Bauble probably bought me a decent amount of time. So let's float a green, do Argothian Enchantress, then Wild Growth here, drawing 2 cards, and we will very quickly undo the discard-based damage that my opponent has done. Now, I have 3 Rest in Peace. 2 of those have been taken by discard already, so it's actually more likely that I aggro my opponent out with discard here than that I combo kill them, and that's something important to keep in mind. Surveil land. Past in Flames. Sure. Alrighty. So there's my confirmation that my opponent is in the Ant ballpark. They like both of their cards, so seems like they are making long-term plans. I am going to turn off all auto yields that I have already made. Yeah, 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 yeah. So, okay, good. Now, I am going to cast a Wild Growth targeting my Sarah's Sanctum. There are now a couple of these triggers on the stack. In response to one of those triggers, I'm going to crack this and get my last copy of Rest in Peace. Draw, draw, then tap this for mana, then cast Rest in Peace. You can also go for Solitary Confinement there. The Solitary Confinement is like a little sketchy with the cards that I currently have in hand, though. So I don't really need to draw more cards this turn. So I think I am into redundant Vexing Bauble just in case, and a new Argothian Enchantress. So there's a new land drop. Oh, sorry. Opponent stepped away for a minute. They did a Burning Wish for a Meltdown, which is kind of funny because I have another Vexing Bauble in hand, but, you know, good to know. This is always green this turn. I'm gonna go ahead and fetch a land out of deck. So this is 3 card draws. We are not looking for the On Thin Ice sorts of cards. We are looking for cards named Helm of Obedience at this point. Solitary Confinement is great. Helm of Obedience is better, though. Let's just win. Helm, target you. Alright, cool. That Vexing Bauble that I top decked after my opponent used some initial discard spells on us was really good. Alright, what do you do? X-Proof. That seems fine. Stony Silence actively seems good. Force of Vigor's okay. Fairy, I don't know, is good enough. Disruptor Flute, I kind of have to make called shots correct, but can be fine. I am not interested in On Thin Ice. Those 4 are going immediately. It probably starts with these. So, what about Disruptor Flute? Green Sun is slow and could come out. Sterling Grove is slow and could come out. I know Sterling Grove kind of saved our butts there. Well, maybe all the Sterling Groves come out. I don't know. I'm going to play 2 Disruptor Flutes. I don't know, maybe Disruptor Flute's not good if my opponent is going to Burning Wish for Meltdown to get rid of Vexing Baubles anyway. Okay, this hand does nothing. It just does not have functional mana. This hand probably does not beat my opponent's 7-card hand. Vexing Bauble is so incredibly impactful. Rest in Peace is usually going to be impactful. I would keep a hand that looks like this on 5. Yeah. So this one goes back, and probably land 3 goes back here. We should expect our opponent to either combo off or interact with our hand in some meaningful way early on. Here we see something neat that Storm decks can do, where you Lotus Petal to Brainstorm, and then you can still fetch on that same turn. Looks like they kept a risky one, and the Brainstorm did not pay off. So, how do we feel about Enchantress at the end of the day here? As far as this build goes, there's some tension. Vexing Bauble is not an enchantment, and accordingly does not trigger all of these various cards, which is a big deal and matters. And the curve often works out so that you can't cast this card without time walking yourself, which feels kind of bad. Sometimes that's fine if you have one critical card that you need to resolve. I like Rest in Peace main deck. Solitary Confinement doesn't feel crazy. It is relatively hard for a blue-black deck, for example, to interact with this if you already have something like a Vexing Bubble or Destiny Spinner in play. So once you start popping off a little bit, a Solitary Confinement can either buy you a shit ton of time or fully stabilize the game. So for what it is, I think this is reasonable, but I would have a hard time in good faith recommending that someone play this deck in something serious like Eternal Weekend. I don't think this deck is fast enough or powerful enough or flexible enough or has enough advantages to make it better than playing something like Eldrazi or one of the various blue-black X decks that exist in the format right now. We didn't get Bowmastered today, but we did eat Narset, which has the same general principle. So like there are going to be some cards that can pretty close to singularly shut down your deck. And if you run into an All Is Dust or an Ugin or something like that, you know, it is not crazy for you to eat a 15 for 1 or something like that from one of those cards. I felt like my sideboard options were pretty reasonable. So I'm going to give the deck an overall thumbs up for design, thumbs down for tournament competitiveness, and thumbs up for being interesting to play. It was a fun puzzle to try and solve. There's a lot of like micro optimization for like, okay, which land do I tap here? Which color mana do I float? There's a lot of that sort of stuff that can come up. And I think that it is interesting. Like I enjoyed playing this league a lot. Anyway, you need any Enchantress cards, you know where to go. Promo code ThrabenU to save a little bit on your order. And folks, I hope you all have a wonderful rest of the day. See ya.